Hello, this is the IronClaw instructional video. Firstly, I'd like to say a massive thank you for purchasing the IronClaw. I hope to be able to give you a much better understanding of your claw through this video so that you can get as much benefit from this product as possible. I will show you what is included in the standard and premium sets, how to put all the parts together and use your claw for the first time. I will also include everything else that I've learned during my time using the IronClaw. First off, let's discuss the two different purchase options. The standard option comes with a genuine leather mitt, a powder coated faceplate with attached straps. The straps are attached to the steel faceplate so that when your hand is in the mitt and it's loaded, the weight is not putting extra pressure on the mitt itself and the material, so there's not going to be any long-term wear from the weight bearing on the mitt. The straps keep the hand securely fastened to the faceplate, and then you attach the different parts to the faceplate. So a standard IronClaw comes with a two-piece 25mm collar. You have a male piece and a female piece. The female piece is the first piece that fits to the actual faceplate, and that is generally the only piece that you should need unless you're going to be using bigger, thicker weights or you want to have extra leverage. But I just wanted to add two pieces so you had the option of making it longer. Each standard set also comes with a 25mm collar and a ratchet lever handle. The ratchet lever handle allows you to fix the collar to the loading bar and secure it really strongly, but also allows you to move the handle to a position that's favorable. If you tighten it and the handle is sticking out like that, it might catch on something. So what you can do is you can pop it out, you just pull it away from the actual threaded bar, and then you can move it to a place where it's more out of the way. And finally, the last piece of the standard package is this cap end bolt. This is there to fix to the end of the loading pin so that it's doubly secure, so we know that the weight isn't going to come off. So this is super strong already, but if that fails, then the weight won't slide off the end of it, because this has got quite a long thread and that's not coming off. So that's the standard package. What's in the premium package? Well, the premium package includes everything that I've just talked about, as well as an Olympic bar loading pin. The Olympic bar loading pin also includes a removable ring, which can be used for resistance bands. So if you want to get real deep into the long range position and still have a lot of tension at the top of this movement, you'll add a resistance band, and then the weight distribution is in a neutral spot. You'll be able to use the bands to give it extra resistance. This can also be used as a floor loading pin. So where you would have a standard loading pin made of one piece. Now you have, I've not got a 50mm plate here, but you'd be able to put the 50mm plate onto that and then use that as a loading pin. Another great use that I found for this premium package is you can use the 25mm collars, attach them to the loading pin, then load with weight, and then you have an adjustable hammer grip tool, and this adds a different element to grip training. So predominantly wrist and grip training is done with a closed grip, and you use various different offset weighted implements, and you can move your wrist through the various planes of movement. That can also be attached to the faceplate, always making sure that everything is secured, because the weight falling off from a distance could mean a broken toe or just an injury that you don't need. So always make sure that the weight is secured really well, and also that your hand is secured in the glove really well, because I've designed it so that these straps can be tightened really well. There is a slight bump just below my palm, which gives the hand just a slight dome, and this has been proven to be more effective in training. It's a better structural way to use the hand. But when you have it like this, you have extra leverage. That weight is nice and offset so that you can build different planes of movement. Just a brief history of why I designed these. I've broken my wrist a few times growing up, and I just thought that I had plain and simple weak wrists. Then I started to use maces and hammers in my training. My wrist and grip strength got significantly better. But where I was training with a closed fist all the time, I was getting issues in my wrists and in my elbows. And I wanted to learn how to be able to load my hand without engaging my grip, so I could work my wrist in the longest positions with the hand totally open. Because when you're gripping a dumbbell, trying to get extension and flexion, you're limited. The wrist will only move so much. But when you have your flat hand forced open, you can take your wrist to full extension and you can push it back to full flexion. Depending on the way the weight is distributed will also depend on how you get the longest or shortest position. So when the weight is directly on the palm of the hand, see, I've loaded the weight, and now the handle is fully tightened, but it's at a weird angle, so I can pull it back, move it back into a better position, make sure it's all fastened securely, and then add my hand again. Now with this we get really good full extension of the wrist, and we can work with razors. What I'm doing here is I'm focusing my energy into the back of my fingertips. So I'm training my tendons as well as my muscles. This is the longest position, and this will create the most amount of resistance on your tendons. So over time, this is the most vulnerable position for the wrist, and you can then move the weight around and create strength progressively over time. You're also getting great stretch in the wrist, but when you turn it over and you go into flexion, the weight distribution is not the same, so you're not getting the same stretch as you would with the weight offset. So it still works really well. You just have to angle your hand down and then push from the fingertips. This particular flexion to extension, I'm focusing all my attention onto my fingertips. I'm focusing on pushing with my fingertips. If I use the bar, now there's a lot more leverage in that position. It's a lot harder for me. Now that's what you want to strengthen those wrist tendons in that fully flexed position. It's also really good if you're in the extended position, because it's really pulling, you're having to really force the hand up from the fingertips. I'd like to quickly just demonstrate my favorite movements so that you can get off the ground running. Basically, as soon as you get this, you'll be able to know how to use it, and then you can play around with the different settings. I would like to say, as a warning, that tendons can get damaged relatively easily with overuse, and when you are training a long range position regularly, you will potentially get tendinitis. If you take this claw and you load it as heavy as you can get it, and you work through this position, you work through the longest positions of your wrist with a fully loaded hand, and it's really hard. If you do that more than 2 times a week, you will develop almost certainly tendinitis in your wrist or in the wrist tendons. The way to avoid that is to take the load back. So I personally like to heavy load once a week, and then for the rest of the week I will use a much lower weight. So this is my standard plate. It's a 2.5 kg, and I find that to be a really nice weight to challenge my wrist and my shoulders and my elbow in the various different ways in the planes of movement. So starting with the wrist. So what you want to do first is you want to make sure that the mitt is in the right position. I've not glued these mitts to the faceplates like I did with the previous models, because I wanted them to be able to be taken off and used even as focus mitts. So they have even another versatile use. they have even more uses. The hand goes in so that the crease in the wrist is sticking out the back of the mitt. With these ratchet straps, they have like they've got like a little set of teeth. It's not so much teeth, but it's like a double shelf, and that engages with the ridges. So this is one of my own personal tricks that I've learned. When I want to fasten it, you put pressure on the front, because the pressure on the front gets this front tooth to engage with the ridges in this bottom part of the strap. If your hand isn't pressed down and there's too much pressure on the straps, it won't bite. Your hand needs to be down, almost pressing into the mitt, and then you secure it as tightly as you possibly can. The same with this one. Feed the strap into the cover so it's nice and neat. Obviously some people don't like to do that, but that's personal preference. This is the first movements I like to do. 10 to 20 of these. If there's any pain, like sharp shooting pains in your wrist, you need to either take the weight back or not use weight at all for the first little while. There obviously might be some discomfort because the wrist joint is a little bit of a vulnerable joint, so there can be kind of creaks, and like right now for me there's a little bit of a click in there. It could be termed as a pain, but it's not really a pain, it's just a mild uncomfortable feeling because my wrist is working and it's a vulnerable position, but it's not a shooting pain, and if you are getting a shooting pain you need to stop immediately and reevaluate the situation. So once you've finished that, you take your hand to a flat surface, and again I'm pushing with my fingertips. I'm raising my hand up at the wrist joint, and this is building those extensors. Then I move over into palm up position, and I do 10 to 20 of these palm raises. Again, I'm focusing on pushing from my fingertips. And then finally, I like to go from palm down to palm up. The reason why I went for a short loading pin, and the reason why I went for a 25mm loading pin, is because I could get this short 50mm piece that could fix a couple of small weight plates to the front of it, and you could move the hand around the body without the loading pin coming into contact with the body. If the loading pin is attached, you can't get the same movement without the loading pin coming into contact. So I wanted something that was cost effective enough so that I didn't have to raise the price of the entire unit just so that I could get the weight closer to my body, because when you have it like this, there's no loading pin, it just makes it more useful because you can move the hand just like your hand was attached to a weight plate. You see, I can now, I can use my shoulder to work different areas of my shoulder or my chest when you're doing butterflies. Right, from a fully extended position, I'm using my fingertips, not my grip strength. So it's much harder on the joint. You have to use your stabilizers. You don't have that closed grip, which helps with making the arm strong during those different movements, whether it's your wrist, your elbow and forearm, or your bicep, tricep or shoulder. When you are gripping, you create this strength throughout the entire arm. You take that grip away and all of a sudden all of those joints become vulnerable. So the weight capacity is dramatically reduced and the vulnerability of those tendons becomes a lot more acute. So you can damage yourself a lot easier than if you have a closed grip and you're working in a short range. Short range movements are better for building muscle. Long range movements are better for building tendon, but they cause more damage to the area, so we'll need time to repair. I was using them on the weekend and I suddenly thought to myself, hang on a second, I can use this 25mm attachment and fit it to the 50mm attachment, and then that becomes the adjustable wrist curling hammer. And you can fit a load of weight on there, and you can use it as a thick handled club. You can use it to swing, and again, like I say, you can use this as a loading pin for various other things, and this will all be compatible with my transformer sets. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this, and let me know how you get on with your IronClaw.